My name is Cecilia Nadal, and I'm the Executive Director of Gitana Productions. We're doing this conference because over the last 15 years, we've discovered as an arts organization that has tried to bring this community together that it is so important for us to understand how to enter community, how to build community, and how to bring generally St. Louis together. So it is our interest to teach the skill of cross-cultural engagement so we can do better at that.
I'm Rebecca Wiedeker, and I live in Kirkwood, Missouri, and at this time I'm a licensed clinical social worker I do alternative and complementary kinds of therapy. I was traditionally trained as well, and more help people work with getting the belief systems out of themselves. I used to teach school. I taught school for 22 years and years ago, and I was a Benedictine nun from Portsmouth, Arkansas.
Hi, my name is Clye. I am an African-American female, currently an urban farmer living in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, and I am an out lesbian.
I met Clye through a friend of mine. Julian and I spent a lot of time together when we were both former nuns, and we hung out and did things on holidays, and very often Clye was there, and that's how I met her, and we became friends and have kept up the relationship all these years. That was many, many years ago.
I remember meeting Aunt Rebecca through a person who I consider like my mother, who was at one point a social worker in a children's home that I lived in, and Mom we developed a relationship, and I would go over her house on holidays and going on camping trips, and she'd have dinner over, and that's how I met Aunt Rebecca. And then after a while, I left the residential facility and went to stay by default with Mom. And she looked up one day, and I and one of my foster brothers was on the front porch, and she decided to keep us. I guess like stray cats or something. But anyway, when you're used to living alone and you then now have two formally institutionalized teenagers, it can be a rough go. So every now and again, I guess Mom would find somebody to farm me out to, and one of those was Aunt Rebecca. So in a sense, Aunt Rebecca sort of kept me alive, because I think at those points Mom was ready to like, you gotta go. So that's how I remember our relationship started. Her friend Julene is kind of like Mom to me. I learned to make family wherever I was, and that's what you did back in those days, because in the institutions they'd bounce you around like once every 6 months to every 2.5 years. So having family was not, in the traditional sense, was not an option. So I learned to make family wherever I was. And so since she was a good friend with Mom, it just seemed to be natural, but I'm actually not responsible for giving her the name Aunt Rebecca. My children are. Actually, it was Deandras, my middle child, who initially took one look at Aunt Rebecca the first time she met her and called her Boo-Boo, which Aunt Rebecca did not care for. And eventually that didn't take very long to get past that point. But eventually the kids just started identifying people as aunt and uncle, which is common with African Americans. We do that extended family thing. And so she just, Aunt Rebecca, the kids started doing it, and I just, because I gave them permission to do so, once they said, this is our aunt, I said, well then you have to respect her and respond to her in the same way you would if she were my sister or my actual blood aunt. So I guess I should be honest and say the kids are more responsible for giving her the name than I am. But that's who she is. She is my elder, and she has a place of authority in the family.
I live out in the county. She lives in the city. Clye uses a bus all the time. We have access to cars and that way. There are times when she said, well, I don't think I want to go there. that she would have to remind us. I don't think I'd feel comfortable there. So it's like learning to respect that and understand without having to go into a lot of detail. I could get and understand it, but I mean, I didn't understand it totally, but I understood enough to know, okay, there's some other, that kind of thing.
It's a different world, and there are certain structures and things, kind of like, and I'm going to say this only because this is the only comparison I have to. When you're in, they tell me when you're in jail, there's someone who tells you when to move, when to get up, what to eat, when to go to bed, when to turn the lights off, and that's the structure I was used to. But when I was with Mom or when I was Aunt Rebecca, I didn't have as much of that, and so it was really weird. And now as an adult and having children, this relationship's very valuable because she knows more about it than I do. So there are times when I'll call and I'm like really crazy. And it's nice to talk to somebody who can look at that from a different perspective. But those are the cultural differences. It took me a long time to acclimate to non-residential living. A long time.
Okay. We had to understand too that they have a little bit of acting out here and then, way back when, during teenage, and to really understand that from that level, and she could help me, and I could kind of reason with her. I mean, there wasn't a lot of it, but there was some. Obviously, we do that with anybody. Mm-hmm. Any child is going to do that. Try to test whether we really do care that much, that kind of thing. So once in a while that happened way back when, but it doesn't happen. That's over with, right?
Yeah, I'm almost 50, so.
It's kind of, there's so much needed kind of cross-cultural thing. And it puts everybody at ease. I mean, I think the more we can get rid of our fears, we have fears, white people have fears, people of color have fears, and why should we be afraid of each other? And such unfounded fears. We need diversity and come together with it, do the cross-cultural engagement. It makes so much sense.
Change has come to the White House, but it needs to come to St. Louis.
St. Louis, we want you to get hooked on cross-cultural engagement.
This conference takes a look dead in the eye at what is needed by St. Louis.